What's up, everybody? UFC 309 is near, which means that it is time for me to give my full card breakdowns and predictions for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelims, working our way up to the main event. I will go ahead and put the time codes down below. But guys, this is kind of definitely one of the shittier pay-per-views of the year. I think we could all agree with that. I know a lot of us wanted to see Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. There's some fights that fell off the card. But this is kind of like I don't know. It's the main event is kind of what's selling this. And then also an outstanding co-main event between Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. But I first want to mention, Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic is still an interesting fight, right? I know that it's maybe not the fight a lot of people wanted. They wanted to see the young guy Aspinall in there. This is still like an OG type of throwback matchup, right? You have the guy who everyone kind of looks at as the GOAT in Jon Jones versus the greatest heavyweight of all time in Stipe Miocic. This is an interesting matchup, right? Jon has one fight at heavyweight where he dominated Ciryl Gane, and then you have Stipe Miocic has been away for a while, coming off that KO loss to Francis Ngannou. So what's going to happen there? We'll discuss. Co-main event, Oliveira versus Chandler. It's an unbelievable fight. I love it, but hate it at the same time because I don't want to see either guy lose, but we know that fight's probably ending in a finish. I mean, that is going to be absolute fireworks in the rematch there between those two. And then we also have some other fights on the card where we have some of these up-and-coming guys who they look outstanding. They look like they have what it takes, to be at the top of the division, but they're facing their toughest test and a big step up in competition, which we'll get to for some of these guys. So some interesting matchups here on this card. But nonetheless, man, kind of definitely one of the shittier pay-per-views of the year. But let's waste no time and hop right into this, starting with the very first fight of the evening between Veronica Hardy and Eduarda Moura. Now, this is an interesting fight. And the reason I say it's an interesting fight is because, look, I think Veronica Hardy is a really solid fighter. I think that she's very complete. I think she's got good striking. I think that she just is a very well-rounded mixed martial artist, as to where Eduarda, it seems like there's a little bit of holes in her game, right? Coming off a loss and some of those different things. She is a good fighter. She does have a good skill set. But I think coming into this, everyone talks about how, you hear the last name Hardy and you're like, oh yeah, Dan Hardy's, wife here in Veronica. Having Dan Hardy in her corner and just helping her prepare for fights is such an advantage compared to what a lot of other fighters have, man. And when you have a good camp, when you have good training partners, that's great. But when you have someone who is as meticulous at breaking things down as Dan Hardy, that just has to be an enormous advantage. It just has to be, man. And, he's working with the PFL. All he does is break down films, and he nitpicks everyone's tendencies and understands areas to exploit. And we have seen that in Veronica's career thus far because she started off kind of rocky and couldn't really find her footing, couldn't find her grip. And then over the past few fights, she's just been a new fighter. She's gotten stronger. She physically is stronger. Her speed is there. She cuts good angles. She scoots around on the outside very well. She's got good, clean striking. The only negative to her is she goes to some very close decisions, right? And even if she does win, they're still kind of close rounds, and she does throw out enough to where it does look good to the judges, which is why I'm going to pick her in this matchup. But again, it's hard to trust Veronica Hardy in terms of it. You can't really rely on her to get a finish. You can't really rely on her to, like I said, she doesn't have a ton of power. So it's really, you're basically looking at her to utilize strategic, footwork, come in with a good game plan, and kind of stick and move and work her way to a decision. And that's how I see her getting this one done. And I don't think that Eduarda presents enough challenges to Veronica in this matchup. And I'm kind of just banking on the game plan of Veronica Hardy with her footwork, with her timing, with her speed to kind of keep her at range and keep Moura off of her. But again, like I said, Veronica doesn't really win a lot of fights convincingly. So in this one, I think it's going to be a very close back and forth matchup, but I think Veronica's output will be the difference in this matchup. Moving on, we have Basile Hafez and Oban Elliott. Now, this is a fight that I've actually went back and forth on quite a bit because with Basile Hafez, he's an entertaining guy to watch, right? The first thing when you hear his name, you think of two things, right? That crazy performance against Mickey Gall where it was just a back and forth war where Mickey Gall, where we're going to talk about here shortly, he somehow just came out a complete dog. Normally we see Mickey Gall, if a fight stays on the feet, he's just getting decimated, and he was standing in the phone booth trading with Basile Hafez, which turned out to be just an incredible fight. If you would have told me that Mickey Gall would have been in a fight, like a fight of the year type of matchup, I'm not saying it's fight of the year, but one of those back and forth crazy matchups, I would have called you absolutely crazy. So that was an unbelievable fight. But again, if you're getting into a barn burner with Mickey Gall on the feet, I don't know, man. Like that's hard for me to trust. And yeah, Mickey's made some improvements, but a lot of that is because Basil Hafez, as good as he is, he's a very well-rounded fighter. He just loves to throw nukes, man. He throws vicious overhand winging shots, and it's very dangerous because if it lands, it's going to put your lights out. But he's lost some close split decisions in the past. And with him, whenever you're so reckless like that, right? When people talk about a guy like Michael Chandler or Josh Emmett, where they just are winging these big looping shots, someone who's just very technical and throws good straight shots down the middle like Elliott is going to be able to take advantage of that. And as much as I like Basil Hafez, I think that he is a really, really funny, or a really, not funny, but a fun guy to watch because he's got great power. And we saw what he was able to do against Jack Della Maddalena. Like that's kind of what put him on the map. He goes out there against JDM, people are like, oh, JDM's going to run through this guy. And Hafez goes out there and says, watch this. And that just really, really, it kind of catapulted Hafez into the limelight. And then he goes out there and has a back and forth with Mickey Gall. I don't know, man. And then coming into this with Elliott, who coming off the win over Parsons, like I just really like what we have seen thus far from Elliott. I think that he has really solid striking, really solid grappling. He's very technical. And whenever you get a guy like Hafez, who's a big, strong dude who just wings a lot of, big, heavy shots, you can beat him to the punch with good, clean striking. And I do believe that Elliott is going to win this fight by decision. But again, I could see this being Oban having to dig deep here because that melon head, man, is going to be tested. Because if Hafez lands, it could be some problems for him because we know with Hafez, there's no questions about the power. So coming into this is two well-rounded guys. It just happens to, in my opinion, I think that the edge should go to Elliott in terms of he's just a little more technical, and I think he's going to beat Hafez to the punch. I got Elliott by decision because he's also another guy that goes to decision. So moving on, we have Mickey Gall versus Ramiz Brahimaj. Now, I'm not picking Mickey Gall. I'm going to pick Ramiz to win this fight. And the reason I can't pick Mickey Gall is because, he went out there against Hafez, and he did look like a new guy, right? His striking looked really pinpoint accurate. He was moving really well. He looked the best he's ever looked in his career, in my opinion. But it still wasn't enough. And I know it was a close fight, but it still wasn't enough. And I know that, Hafez is, maybe he's a better fighter than Ramiz, or, that could be debatable. But I just think that Mickey Gall, if he doesn't get this fight to the floor, if he's not able to utilize his jiu-jitsu, I just think Ramiz is able to pick him apart. I know that Mickey Gall, like I said, that last fight, I don't know if that was a fluke or if that's the new version of Mickey Gall, but I'm not banking on that being the new Mickey coming into this because I have flashbacks of Mike Perry beating his ass. I've got some nasty flashbacks throughout the career of Mickey Gall to where it's like, oh, this guy's this young, promising dude out of Jersey. He's got crazy submissions. Wait till you see what he can do. And he just goes in there and gets dominated by guys that are physically stronger than him. And that's kind of what it comes down to. And that tends to happen with some of these guys that have outstanding jiu-jitsu. They face someone that is a little bit stronger than them, that has a physical advantage, and that can sometimes negate the jiu-jitsu a little bit. I think we see that in this fight. I think Ramiz lands the more damaging shots and is able to win this thing by decision. But again, if we see a Mickey Gall, the guy who fought Hafez, and he comes out there and he looks pinpoint accurate and, he's not just getting tossed around like he was in the Mike Perry fight, I think there's a real shot that Mickey Gall could possibly win this. But I just can't trust Mickey Gall. He comes back, he spends a bunch of time away, comes back. I don't know, man. I can't pick Mickey Gall coming into this fight. I got Ramiz. Moving on, we have Marcin Tybura versus Diniz. Now, I'm actually kind of interested to see this fight because Diniz was supposed to take on Derek Lewis on the UFC Edmonton Fight Night card. I was really looking forward to that. I thought that, it was either going to be Derek Lewis by I don't know what the hell, because that's usually, you don't know what Derek Lewis is going to show up. But if he did, I could have seen Derek Lewis getting a KO. But with Diniz, man, this dude's dangerous. And you saw it in the Williams fight. You've seen it since he's been in the UFC. He's really good kickboxing, really good timing, good speed, ridiculous power. Obviously, when you're a heavyweight, you have power. But this dude's just a little bit more technical than a lot of the guys that he's been facing in terms of the striking. And a guy like Marcin Tybura has the ability to test Diniz. He absolutely does, because Marcin, coming off of an impressive submission over Tai Tuivasa, yeah, he's big and dangerous, but he's not as clean and technical as a guy like Diniz. Diniz is throwing good straight shots. He's got crazy power. He's setting you up. He's coming in with some confidence now because he was defending some takedowns really well in that Williams fight. So I think Diniz comes into this confident. I think he's going to maintain range, and I think that as Tybura tries to kind of wade forward, and because Tybura, he gets hit, man. He gets hit, he takes damage, and if Tybura can weather an early storm, if Diniz can kind of, blow his load, so to speak, and Tybura can kind of get him tired and resort to the grappling, I can see Tybura absolutely winning this fight by submission, but I don't think it happens. I think that the up and coming here, Diniz, he's got good power, good range management, good timing, good speed. I think that he's going to tag Marcin Tybura, and again, we saw what Tom Aspinall was able to do to Tybura. I'm not saying that Diniz is Tom Aspinall, but Diniz definitely has really good striking. He has some of the better striking that Tybura has seen over his past few fights. He's not going in there against these big dudes who just kind of swing these big loopy haymakers. Diniz sets up shots. I believe that he is going to find that shot on the chin of Marcin Tybura that's going to be able to put him out of there. But I think he's got to get it done in the first round or, midway through the second, because as the fight plays out, if Tybura can make him tired and take it into the later round or into the third round or into the later part of the second round, I could see Tybura, resorting to the grappling, possibly finding a submission. But I don't think it happens. I think Diniz is able to win this one by KO. Moving on, the Onama fight was canceled. We have Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson. I'm going Jim Miller in this matchup. Well, one of the reasons is I just love Jim Miller. I feel like as a UFC fan, if you've been watching the sport for a really long time, A10 man, Jim Miller, he's just a fan favorite. The guy has had one of the most unbelievable careers in mixed martial arts history, to be of his age, to have just been around this time, to have fought some of the who's who in the division and had adversity, the Lyme's disease, the coming back and late in his career, going on a hot streak. I mean, Jim Miller is just absolutely impressive. And, you look at his last fight against Bobby Green, right? I picked Bobby Green to win that fight because I'm like, this is going to be a little bit of a problem for Jim. Bobby Green is a slick striker. He's got really fast hands, really good speed, switches stances, he's just got a funky style, right? Bobby Green's one of those dudes, he's kill or be killed. It's either him or you usually. And we saw him go in there, and I said that Bobby Green was going to be playing darts with Jim Miller. He's just going to be going bing, 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 picking his shots. And that's exactly what happened. But don't let that take away from the fact that I still think Jim Miller is, I don't see that steep decline yet, man. I know he's getting up there in age, but I don't see that decline with Jim Miller right now. Maybe we see it after getting battered around like by Bobby Green there, but I still think Jim Miller has it. He's got really good leg kicks. He's got really good grappling, good submissions. He's got pretty good boxing on the feet. What does Damon Jackson bring to the table? He's got decent submissions as well, decent grappling. I think Jim Miller is definitely the better grappler. So I don't think that Damon Jackson comes out here chasing takedowns, having a bunch of success there. So Jim Miller wins that there. I think Jim Miller beats up his legs. I think Jim Miller outboxes him. I think Jim Miller absolutely picks Damon Jackson apart. And I think Damon Jackson's a good fighter, right? He gets a lot of heat because he got decimated by Elliott, which, Damon Jackson, I think on some interview was like, I'm hoping that he could go out there and get the job done because it doesn't make me look as bad. But look, Elliott is a monster. Outside of that, Damon Jackson, he's kind of had some moments, up and down. He's a good fighter. He's a good fighter, but is he better than Jim Miller, even though Jim Miller's late in his career here? I don't think so. I think Jim Miller holds an advantage everywhere the fight takes place. We haven't seen the steep decline yet. I think Jim Miller comes out, resorts to the grappling, pushes him up against the fence, beats up the legs, turns this into more or less a boxing match. And I could possibly see if Jim Miller's able to clip him with the hands and Damon does try to entertain the grappling, I could see Jim Miller locking up a submission here, but I'm going to go decision, 29-28 decision by Jim Miller. I could see Damon Jackson maybe taking a round off of him, but Jim Miller's gritty, he's durable, he's tough, he's really well-rounded. I think A10 wins this fight. Moving on, we have Chris Weidman versus your boy, Eric Anders. So this is more of a lackluster matchup, right? You kind of got Chris Weidman, who seems like he's towards the tail end of his career. I believe, I've been saying before, I think Chris Weidman is one of the most overrated fighters in UFC history in terms of champions that we've had. Outside of Anderson Silva messing around and getting KO'd and then coming back and having the freak accident, snapping his leg and all that. I mean, Chris Weidman has just kind of been in my opinion, right? He's got a decent left hook. His striking's he had some good leg kicks. We don't see those as much ever since, he broke his leg against Uriah Hall. So he's not the same guy, right? He's getting a little bit older. He's always had, the All-American. He does have really good wrestling, but he's a lot older. Is he going to be able to go out there and just wrestle Eric for 15 minutes? I doubt it. Eric Anders is a big dude, man. Former linebacker at Alabama. Spent some time in the NFL, I think kind of, through some training camps and stuff. But Eric Eric's a solid fighter. I call him like the brown belt everywhere. Like Eric isn't like exactly a specialist anywhere, I would say. He's got good power in his hands, decent striking, pretty solid grappling, good submissions. He's just a well-rounded fighter. There's not many weaknesses other than the fact that he's not super fast. He's not super technical, but he does have power. He's a big dude. He's strong. He can fend off takedowns. He can even mix in, takedowns of his own. I don't see how Chris Weidman wins this fight. I'm going Eric Anders here by decision. I could even see a scenario in which Eric is able to get a finish. It just depends on what Eric shows up, because sometimes Eric goes out there and these fights are kind of, back in the day, he was kind of getting beat up a little bit, but then sometimes he comes back and it's a close fight and he wins a decision, but then he sometimes comes out there like a bat out of hell and puts people away. So I just don't know which Eric we're going to see, but I think whatever Eric we see is going to be better than whatever Weidman we are going to see, and I believe Eric Anders is going to win this fight by decision. I got your boy Eric Anders. Moving on, we have Jonathan Martinez versus Marcus McGhee. This is one of the fights on the card that when I saw this fight get booked, man, I was excited. I was like, give me this one, because with Jonathan Martinez, he's got some of the most brutal leg kicks in all of MMA, right? And he was, I was hard on him coming into that last fight against Aldo. I'm like, Jonathan Martinez is getting tuned up by Aldo, right? Jose Aldo has outstanding leg kick defense. He's going to be able to smother the range, turn it into a boxing match. And Jonathan Martinez doesn't have nearly good enough boxing to hang with a guy like Jose Aldo. But again, that's Aldo. That's Jose Aldo, one of the best we've seen in the sport. So when it comes down to that, I don't hold that too much against Jonathan Martinez. But what it does show is my theory is still, I think, correct. If you can smother the range of Jonathan Martinez, if you have an answer for the leg kicks to not take too many of them, and turn it into a boxing match, you can absolutely pepper Jonathan Martinez and outpoint this guy and win a decision, because knocking him out, good luck. He's tough as hell. He's very durable. He's got good cardio. He doesn't really fade. And those leg kicks, man, they are nasty for the entire duration of the fight. He will, whether you're orthodox, southpaw, whatever stance, he will go inside, outside. He will attack the hell out of your legs. He'll bring it up to the body, try to set up head kicks. But what we even saw in the Aldo matchup, which some of that might have been because Aldo was so worried about the leg kicks, it seems to be like Martinez's hands are coming around a little bit. And if that's the case, I could see a scenario where he goes in here and he outstrikes Marcus McGhee. But I don't know, man, because Marcus McGee's got a really, really good camp over there. He trains with Sean O'Malley, Mario Bautista. They got some really, really good training partners over there. And Marcus McGhee, I mean, the dude looks old as hell. I don't remember how old he is, but this dude, he's sensational, man. He's got good timing, good power, good speed, really, really good footwork. He's a really well-rounded fighter. I just have a very, very hard time picking this fight, guys, because look, if Jonathan Martinez can get those leg kicks off and he can blast those and Marcus McGhee has no answer, Jonathan Martinez is winning this fight. And I'm not going to say he's going to get a leg kick TKO. We can't pick him to win by that every single fight, but I see a scenario to where he's able to really damage the legs of Marcus and make this, turn this into just a grueling fight for Marcus, because he's not going to be able to put, his weight on one leg. But I believe Marcus McGhee comes in with a good game plan. I believe that he is fast on the feet. He's got good power in his hands. He's got really, really, really good range management. And that's the difference. If you have good range management, I feel a little bit more confident picking you when you're going up against a guy that has outstanding leg kicks. I believe Marcus McGhee him and his team will have an answer for this. They cannot just let his leg get obliterated, because if it does, he will not win this fight. But I believe Marcus, with good footwork, relying on the in and out movement, exploding in and out of range, I think he's able to really land some good shots on Jonathan Martinez. But like I said, good luck trying to put Martinez away. I know Marcus McGhee has power. He's been finishing guys. I don't know that he gets a finish in this, but I think that he lands the more significant shots, the more damaging shots, avoids quite a bit of leg kicks. I think Marcus McGhee wins this fight by unanimous decision. Moving on, we have, I'm excited for this one, man. We got Mauricio Ruffy and James Llontop. So we talk about Mauricio Ruffy. Hopefully everyone knows who this guy is by now. This dude is someone who I highlighted in my Dark Horses, Prospects on the Rise, whatever you want to say video. This dude he's got the it factor. right? Whenever you watch a fighter, the way they move, the way they strike, the way they just carry themselves, they have, what they call the it factor. That is Mauricio Ruffy. And not to mention, he's coming out of that Fighting Nerds camp, man. I've been saying, I don't know if they got like a lab out there where they're just like, they have people in capsules and they're just like picking and choosing which potions to give them. Jiu-jitsu here, karate here, boxing here. I mean, these dudes are all so damn good, man. I mean, you got Jean Silva, Carlos Prates, Caio Barralo. Like, they are absolutely spectacular fighters. I mean, they have really good striking, good jiu-jitsu, and good boxing. I mean, they are truly complete and very entertaining to watch. With all that being said, this dude fights like Conor McGregor, man. He absolutely fights like Conor McGregor back in his featherweight days. That karate-like stance, the in and out movement, the timing, that pull countering. He's an orthodox fighter instead of how Conor was a southpaw, where Conor, it was the pullback left hand, where with Mauricio, it's that pullback right hand, man. He has absolutely killer timing. He has an outstanding jab. The way that he just decimated Jamie Malarkey was beyond impressive. And I know people are going to say, oh, he's lost before. Yeah, that one loss was Mauricio Ruffy was having a lot of success in that matchup, and he just gassed. He got tired. A guy just melted him with pressure as the fight played out. And that's kind of what concerns me in this fight. I am going to pick Mauricio Ruffy by KO because I believe he is that good. I believe that we are looking at one of the future guys of this division and a future star here. But James Llontop, going out there against Slava Claus, Yaroslav Borshov, he showed incredible toughness. That's the thing about James, man. He's got really, really good toughness. He's got good hands. He's fun to watch. He likes to move forward. He's a fighter's fighter. He's just going to try to outgrit you, and he's going to bite down on the mouthpiece and slug it out. The problem is, how the hell are you going to come in with that style against a sniper like Mauricio Ruffy, man? You're just going to get dotted up by Mauricio Ruffy here. The only way James wins this fight is if Mauricio gasses and gets tired and throws the kitchen sink at James and James is still hanging around. I don't see that happening. The accuracy of Mauricio Ruffy is different. The power, the speed, very McGregor-esque. The way he mixes everything together. I mean, that scissor sweep or that sweep that he pulled off in his debut was absolutely, just everything about this guy spells superstar to me, spells possible champion in the future. I think Mauricio Ruffy wins this fight. I'm going to go by second round KO. I don't know. Maybe he can in the first round, but James is really durable. But again, relying on durability against snipers like a Mauricio Ruffy, not going to be a great idea coming into this one. I think Mauricio Ruffy gets KO. Moving on, we have Viviana versus Karine Silva. Now, I don't know why this fight's on the main card. I wish this one was on the prelims, but I think Karine Silva wins this fight. I think that she's got really good striking. She's got very good grappling, and she just has the better overall skill set, right? Viviana, I feel like we've already seen her ceiling at this point. I know she has decent grappling. She's decent on the feet, but I think with Karine Silva, the speed, whenever you talk about striking, right? You talk about someone who seems like they've already kind of hit their ceiling, like I said with Viviana. Whenever you get someone like Silva who is just so smooth and fast on the feet, that's hard to deal with for someone who feels like they've kind of plateaued and just kind of hanging around in the division. I just think Silva is someone who's on the rise. I think she's got good striking, good timing, and I think it's going to be a problem for Viviana. I think Viviana is going to be behind all night long. I don't know if Silva's able to get her out of there because Viviana is very durable. But again, I can see Silva just outpointing her, picking her apart, and winning a unanimous decision. I got Silva getting this one done. Moving on, we have Bo Nipple versus Paul Craig. We all kind of know what the idea here is, right? First of all, I'm glad they put Bo Nipple on this because he absolutely saved the pay-per-view. I'm sure the pay-per-view is going to get 300,000 more buys now that's got Bo Nipple on it. I'm kidding. But I'm going to go Bo Nipple. Look, the UFC is strategically building up Bo Nipple, right? They're slow playing it. He's only got, 6 professional fights. They made him come back on the Contender Series because he beat somebody too easily. They wanted to get him an extra fight. I watched his debut in Jorge Masvidal's promotion. Look, Bo Nipple's different with the wrestling. We all know that. Penn State, he's just as credentialed of an American wrestler as you could basically get. But yet, he's still very raw on the feet. There is a lot of holes in the striking game of Bo Nipple. But again, he's a big dude. He's got good power, but it's the wrestling with Bo Nipple. And coming off of that performance against Cody Brundage, it just didn't. He got the finish, but he was struggling. Cody Brundage shucked him off. And it just it was not to me, it wasn't a stock rising performance for Bo Nipple. Bo's like, I just kind of had an off night or something like that, whatever he said. I mean, was it? Was it, or is Bo Nickal possibly just overrated in MMA? I don't know, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out because Paul Craig, you talk about Paul Craig, this guy, one of the most unpredictable fighters in UFC history. One of the most unpredictable fighters in UFC history. But with all that being said, he's got submission wins over Jamal Hill and Magomed Ankalaev. Like, it's just, like, how do you have the career that he's had, but yet you got subs over two of the best light heavyweights on the planet, but then you're out there just getting your ass beat? Like, you just cannot trust Paul Craig. But again, he's been in there with the who's who of the division, right? Paul Craig's not out there fighting some dude who probably won't be on the roster next week. You know, he's out there fighting some of the best guys in the division. He's out there against Caio Borralho. Like, he's fighting the top dudes, basically, right? You know, this is going to be a tough test for Bo Nickal if Bo Nickal can't get him out of there early, because I can promise you this. If Bo Nickal has to go in there and he's banking on wrestling for 15 minutes in this matchup, that's dangerous to be messing around with Paul Craig on the ground that long, because we've seen guys get comfortable, beat the hell out of Paul Craig, because he's kind of like a punching bag on the feet. He doesn't have particularly good striking, but God, he may have better striking than Bo Nickal. I don't know. We haven't seen enough from Bo Nickal on the feet. We saw what he did to Val Woodburn. He's got a winging overhand left, and again, you're so worried about the takedown that shot can land and put you out. But I mean, I don't know what to think of this fight. I think it's a bad matchup all around. I don't think it's very entertaining, right? I know they're trying to make Bo Nickal this big star. I don't think he's a star, right? I mean, I know he has a great, background. He's a great wrestler. This is MMA. This isn't wrestling, and again, if he could go out there and he could dominate Paul Craig, take him down, beat him up, land some nasty ground and pound, find a submission, because Bo Nickal does have really good submissions. Bo Nickal, he's one of the more entertaining guys that we've seen come over from the American-style wrestling background. He actually is pretty entertaining compared to a lot of the other guys, like a Colby Covington, for God's sake. You know what I mean? I could see him going out there, landing a good shot, hurting Paul Craig, taking him down, mauling him with the grappling, finding a submission. But again, if Paul Craig takes an ass whooping, ends up staying around, hanging out till later in the fight, he could possibly pull off a submission and pull off a gigantic upset against Bo Nickal. I don't think it's likely. Still could happen, but I got Bo Nickal by, I'm gonna say second round finish. I think it's a close first round. He gets his takedowns, control time, but then finds his submission, lands some good ground and pound, busts Craig up. I got Bo Nickal. Finally, to our co-main event of the evening, we have Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira versus Iron Michael Chandler. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, guys, I love and hate this fight at the same time. I like this fight because it's going to end in a finish. I mean, I hope I don't jinx it. This fight's ending in a finish, man. Like, I don't see any way we see the judges' scorecards. Both of these dudes are prolific finishers. Charles Oliveira knocks people out, submits people. Michael Chandler out there KOing people. He's got ridiculous power. I mean, this is just an absolute banger of a matchup. I don't want to see either guy lose. I'm a big fan of both dudes here. But what this comes down to for me in this matchup is Charles Oliveira is so technical, man. He's so technical. He has some of the best jiu-jitsu we have ever seen in the history of the sport. I believe that he is the more well-rounded and complete fighter. We saw the first time around between these two. Michael Chandler came out like a bat out of hell, landed some really good shots, hurt Charles Oliveira really bad, almost had him out of there. Charles put him in what was maybe the worst position Chandler could be in with Oliveira on his back. Chandler was able to survive. So it was a crazy first round between these two. And then it comes out in the second round, Charles Oliveira acts like none of that happened and comes out and lands a perfectly clean left hook, drops Michael Chandler, and gets him out of there. So if that Charles Oliveira shows up, it's going to be very hard for Michael Chandler to win the fight. However, I'm going to pick Michael Chandler by I don't know what the hell. And what I mean by that is, if you guys are fans of my channel, I'd say that every time I pick Derek Lewis to win the fight. You can say, you remember the memes that were going around where it's like, this guy's more technical than Derek. They got the grappling advantage, the speed advantage. All that being said, Derek Lewis by KO. That's how I'm looking at this fight for Michael Chandler. Charles Oliveira is more technical. He has outstanding Muay Thai, really good leg kicks, really good front kicks, outstanding submissions, really good boxing, good high guard defense, the way he moves forward, tries to push the pace, the outstanding submissions. He's got legit power in that right hand and the left hook. There's something about Michael Chandler heading into this fight, man. There's something. I said it on Twitter, man. I was like, look, Michael Chandler just seems more dialed in than I've ever seen him. I've watched Michael Chandler basically his entire career since he's been in MMA, all the way back to Bellator when they were, fighting in what I think it was like outdoors and old-looking octagons. And you think Michael Chandler, his technique's bad now. You don't know anything. Back in the day, he would just brawl it out and dip his head and just slug it out. I mean, there was no technique to where now we at least get a Chandler who's in a stance. He's got his hands up. He kind of moves forward. He's got that good in and out, fast, explosive style. I just think he's going to be able to hurt Charles Oliveira and get him out of there. I just feel like Michael Chandler is in a point in his career with all that has happened with the Conor McGregor fight, with all the memes and the nonsense that he's had to deal with, being sidelined for so long, being toyed with by Conor. I think this dude's going to come back like a man on a mission, like a bat out of hell to start the fight. I think he's going to get in Charles Oliveira's face. He's going to throw caution to the wind. That is what Michael Chandler is at his best. I know everyone's like, oh, just be more technical and calm, Michael Chandler. We saw that against Tony Ferguson in that first round, and it was not going very well, right? Tony Ferguson was picking him apart. It just didn't look particularly good by Chandler. Chandler does not fight well moving backwards. So Charles Oliveira is going to try to take the center, try to back him up, attack the lead leg because Chandler stands very bladed, threaten him with front kicks up the middle. And one of the areas that Charles absolutely thrives is when you're throwing those big winging shots. He just bites down on the mouthpiece, sits behind that guard, sits on a shot and lands a good, clean, straight right hand. We saw it against Justin Gaethje. That is how Charles Oliveira could win this fight, is hurting Michael Chandler and then subbing him is how I would see Charles Oliveira winning this one. But I think Michael Chandler just is a man on a mission that won't be denied. I don't know, like all the shit that he's dealt with, I feel like something good's going to happen for this guy or something good has to happen for him. I think Michael Chandler's able to get a KO in this fight. But again, I don't want to see either person lose. I really like Charles Oliveira. I'd love to see him get back into the title picture. Michael Chandler I feel like he's not going to be denied. Something in the air is different heading into this fight for me with Michael Chandler. The power, the speed, the mentality. I think Michael Chandler like I said, Charles Oliveira, in my opinion, is the better all-around fighter, but all it takes from Michael Chandler is one shot, man. He's very explosive, very powerful, springs in and out of range, incredibly dangerous. I think Michael Chandler is able to win this fight, but it's going to have to be early on because the longer this fight goes, Chandler's gas tank isn't the best. I can see Charles Oliveira having a lot of success, and I don't think Chandler looks to the grappling. And if he does, and he can't posture up and land some vicious ground and pound to get Charles out of there, he's going to be in some trouble because Charles, all he needs is a limb. All he needs is a neck. All he needs is an arm, a leg, whatever, and Charles can sub anybody from anywhere. So again, absolute banger of a fight, best fight on the card. I'm glad the UFC booked this rematch because we know that this one's going to be fireworks. Moving on. Last but not least, the main event of the evening between Johnny Bones Jones and Stipe Miocic. This one hurts, man, because I like Stipe Miocic. He just seems like a really cool dude. He's a fireman. He just seems like a dude that you'd love to just sit down and watch the fights with. Just a super cool dude. I have to go with Jon Jones in this matchup. I made a case. I made a video here on my channel where I made a case like, look, do not write Stipe Miocic off in this matchup. And I still stand by that. Stipe has really good boxing. He's got good movement. He has good timing. He has good grappling. He has knockout power. He does have all of those things. The problem is, when I watched back Stipe Miocic's fights with Daniel Cormier, when I watched him back with Francis Ngannou, when I watched it back against Junior Dos Santos, Stipe Miocic loves to sit on the back foot. He loves to move laterally. He doesn't have to be moving forward the whole time. Sometimes he will, right? If he lands a good shot and he doesn't like being backed up too much, he'll start to move forward. He lets guys kind of dictate the pace and move forward and box him up against the fence. And if you're going to let Jon Jones do that, it's going to be a problem because what we saw from Jon in the last time out against Ciryl Gane, he put Gane on his heels right away. He had a good high guard. He was moving forward. The only basically shot Gane landed was a groin shot. Was a kick right to the nuts. So outside of that, Jon had a good high guard. He was moving forward. It didn't look particularly pretty. It looked a little labored. But I do believe that he is going to march Stipe Miocic down. I don't know that Stipe is going to look the same as he did back then. If he does, Stipe Miocic could come in here and KO Jon Jones. The problem is, Jon's able to mix everything up so well. He's got great takedowns, really good kicks, good trips, good knees, elbows. And now that the 12-6 elbow is back in the game, I think Jon Jones is able to take Stipe Miocic down. I think Stipe's able to survive early in the fight, but then we get into the second, third round. I think Jon is able to eventually get him down. Stipe starts to get a little labored, as he does, and Jon is able to just land some nasty, vicious ground and pound to where we get a stoppage, or to where Stipe's covering up and Jon locks into submission. Because, guys, look, as much as I would like to see Stipe win this fight, whenever I watch those fights back and I see the way that these guys are able to dictate the pace and move forward on Stipe Miocic, Jon Jones is going to take advantage of that. He has outstanding fight IQ. He has a full arsenal of skills. He's acclimated to the weight class. He's confident coming into this. He's toying with everybody, saying that he's not going to fight Tom Aspinall. Who knows if he's actually ducking or he's just saying that to fire everybody up. I don't know. It sounds like he's ducking, talking about he wants to fight Alex Pineda. I don't know. Either way, Jon Jones, whether you like the guy or not, he's not particularly a great person. A lot of the stuff that he's done outside of fighting. But when it comes to fighting, he is one of the most complete fighters that we have ever seen in the history of the sport. He is good everywhere. The only issue with Jon throughout his career is he struggles with guys with good boxing. We saw it against Dominic Reyes. We saw it against Alexander Gustafsson. That has always been the area to exploit with Jon, is the boxing. And as good a boxing as Stipe Miocic has, he's not fast enough, in my opinion. He's not fast enough. When you watch Dominic Reyes, he's floating around, bouncing in out of range, landing these good shots. Gustafsson's floating around, moving all over the place, landing these good shots. Stipe Miocic is a lot kind of just sitting there waiting for you to come to him. He's just kind of, his hands are twitching, and he goes, pop, pop, and then just kind of touches you, which absolutely he could land a nasty shot on Jon on the entry. But I think Jon Jones is going to stand and strike with him. He's going to throw those little oblique kicks, get Stipe pulling his leg out, and then that way it's going to take away Stipe's base to where he's not able to completely plan on a shot. Jon's going to be able to clinch him up, take him down, wear him out. I think Jon Jones is able to win this fight. Again, early on, I expect Stipe to put up a good fight. But if Stipe comes back, he looks speedy, he looks powerful, kind of like what he did before, he puts up a good fight. But if he has lost a little bit of a step, he's going to get destroyed by Jon Jones, I think. I just do. And I even said that in my video where I'm like, don't sleep on Stipe, which you can't. Because like I said, if Stipe comes back and he can fend off the takedowns, keep it on the feet, I think there's a real shot that he KOs Jon. But I think Jon has a perfect game plan coming into this. He always does. He's like Conor McGregor. They visualize how they're going to win the fight. They come in with a game plan. I think Jon Jones comes into this very strategic, mixes everything together, marches Stipe down, doesn't give him a lot of room to operate, smothers him, relies on really good elbows to bust him up, cut him open. Because the one thing about Stipe, you're going to have to dig deep because he will not give up on himself. He's durable as hell. He's tough as nails. He has power that carries all throughout the fight. We saw that in the Daniel Cormier fights. He can KO you in the third, fourth, fifth round. It doesn't have to be in the first two rounds. So that is promising if Stipe can get it into the later rounds. But again, I don't see him stopping all the takedowns that Jon is going to throw his way. And Jon coming up from light heavyweight to heavyweight, we saw Daniel Cormier, that, the lighter man coming up a weight class, did give Stipe some issues, right? It took Stipe some time to kind of figure out how to solve Daniel Cormier, and really it was that liver shot that he adjusted to that was able to kind of win him those fights, right? So again, Jon has outstanding fight IQ. He's got really good range. He's long. He's hard to get in on. I just think Stipe is going to struggle in this fight. But again, if he keeps it on the feet, he could absolutely get a KO. I just don't think he can stop the takedowns for 25 minutes against Jon Jones. And the ground and pound, too nasty from Jon. I think Jon's able to get him out of there. But I want to hear from you all down in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, help your boy out. I would appreciate it. See you next time.